Preface and Chapters 1 through 3 of A Memoir on the Life and Character of the Reverend Prince Demetrius de Gallitzin. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. A Memoir on the Life and Character of the Reverend Prince Demetrius de Gallitzin, by Thomas Heyden. Preface. The author of this sketch, who, for almost a quarter of a century, had been bound by the closest bonds of amity with the Reverend Prince, has been frequently urged by respected friends to compose and publish a notice of his life. The reason of this application to him, doubtless, was the well-known fact of the great friendship between the parties. The circumstances of his having assisted at his dying moments, his having twice preached his funeral sermon, namely, first on the day of his interment, again on the removal of his remains to the new monument, his having lectured several times on his life and services, besides his being well acquainted with the history of Loretto and its large congregation. The writer could not resist any longer the many appeals made to him to give to the public all the reminiscences he had of his lamented friend. Moreover, he became alarmed lest many traits of his life would quickly be forgotten and perish, if not at once secured and perpetuated by the press. If this labor of love was not attended to presently, it was said that the few remaining contemporaries of the Reverend Prince Gallitzin would soon sink into the tomb, and thus much important material for his life would be lost forever. In truth, an English narrative of his career should have been published 20 years ago, when all the old families and prominent first settlers of his parish were still living, and when all the traditions and minute circumstances of his missionary toils were fresh in the memories of all. Though late in performing this office of friendship, the writer has at last entered upon this pleasing task of gathering up the fragments lest they be lost. His hope is that this humble, very imperfect sketch will be suggestive, may be the means of awakening public attention to the merits of this extraordinary man, and raise up some more competent biographer who will do justice to his memory. Divine inspiration tells us not to praise a man during his life, as if it were said, says St. Augustine, praise him after life, glorify him at the end of his career, because then praise is more usefully bestowed, when the praiser cannot be influenced by a motive of flattery, and the praised cannot be tempted to elation of heart. Bedford, Pennsylvania, August, 1869. Chapter 1. How interesting his life, his ancestors, Prince Demetrius. We are so constituted by nature that we are forced to admire and extol any arduous, perilous project commenced and carried on to completion out of the ordinary course of mortals, beyond what the common run would attempt. The discovery of America by the wonderful man of Genoa, Christopher Columbus, the achievement of American independence by George Washington, astonish us by the boldness and successful issue of the work consummated by these almost inspired men. We are not, or we ought not to be less moved, when we pass from the contemplation of heroism in the worldly to that of the moral and religious order. By the labors of the patriot the chains that bind the body fall, but by the toils of the spiritual liberator those that fetter the immortal soul are broken. And if we are to measure the magnitude of events by their results, those effected by the heroes of faith infinitely surpass all that has been accomplished by the demigods of fame. The deeds of a Francis Xavier or of a Vincent de Paul can compete with those of the most renowned in secular annals. However little we may be given
Sample complete. Ready to continue?